Hello and welcome to the Mind Your Career webinar series. My name is Rachel Burkhan-Ramelfinger and I work with the Alumni Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our webinar entitled Being a Badass, How to Own Your Power in Business. Today's speaker is Alex Batdorf, who is a super power sidekick for female entrepreneurs and the creator of the Get Shit Done series and an entrepreneur herself. But Alex also wanted to be a pop star as a kid until she discovered that she couldn't sing. But she didn't let her dream go. She is currently relearning how to master the guitar so she can do at least one live performance with a dope artist in her future. It is my pleasure to hand the controls over to Alex.
All right. Hi, everybody. Oh, now you see this screen. I'm figuring out everything right now, guys, so bear with me here. Well, thank you so much, guys. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the Get Shit Done Studios, aka my apartment in Brooklyn. I'm Alex Batdorf, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm super excited and so grateful you're taking this time to actually be here to learn a little bit about my story and my journey to becoming a badass by learning how to own my power in business. So before we jump in, I want to give you a little bit of background on me. So I got my BA in sociology at University of Chicago in 2012, and I'm a serial entrepreneur now. My journey to entrepreneurship actually started my third year in the college. So my friend, roommate, classmate, all wrapped up in one, she and I had this crazy idea to develop this platform to enable college women to trade their clothing on campus for free. That company failed, but with any failure comes awesome learning lessons and opportunities. So my mentor, who later became an investor in my last companies at Fit Denim, ended up meeting my co-founder while she was at Booth, and she was pitching the idea for the company at New Venture Challenge. And afterwards, he goes up to her and he says, well, what do you need now? She was like, I need business partners, help me build this. And we ended up meeting, really hit it off. And a few years later, we became a multi-million-dollar e-commerce company where we help consumers find their best fitting designer denim for your body type, and we customize it for free. So if you guys ever need designer denim, check out Fit Denim. However, I did resign from that company in September. We'll get a little more of those juicy details a little later in the presentation. But now I am a business strategy coach for female entrepreneurs. I founded my own business strategy coaching practice called Get Shit Done. And one of my first clients just happened to be a former executive producer for Oprah. And she was the one that really encouraged me to do this. So after our first coaching session, she was like, Alex, this is some of the best coaching I've ever had, but I think that you should be getting more of this information out to more female entrepreneurs at a mass level. And she was like, honey, I know brands when I see one. And so Lisa inspired me to create Get Shit Done, which is the YouTube series I'm launching at the end of the summer, which is going to show female entrepreneurs how you can grow your company in a meaningful way by learning from other badass women who have done it. So that's coming out at the end of the summer. But guys, my journey to owning my power was not an easy one like anyone. It's not easy, but especially for females and people of color, we have systemic barriers that we have to combat on top of us having to deal with ourselves. And I'm sure you guys have heard some, buzzwords like diversity and inclusion. Honestly, I don't think they're being used correctly today. One of my favorite quotes from DeRay McKesson, who is heavily involved with Black Lives Matter, said that diversity is about number of bodies, whereas inclusion is about culture. And so what we're seeing right now, in my opinion, is a lot of diverse bodies being funneled in, whether that in corporations or in entrepreneurship. But we're not seeing the inclusiveness as it should be in terms of having our voices heard, having resources that we should be getting to grow our companies, etc. But if you know me, or for those of you that don't know me, I believe that my purpose is to empower people to empower themselves. So today we're not going to focus on the problem because honestly, I'm so tired of talking about problems, whether that be in politics or entrepreneurship. I want to focus on the solution, and not just any solution, the solution that you can control so you can shape your own outcome. So for those of you that are thinking, well, what about my background? What about like where I came from, income, etc.? Look, guys, I did not come from money. I went to University of Chicago on majority scholarships, both financial and academic. And I've always been a pretty driven, ambitious person, but I didn't always have people rooting for me. So, for example, when I first got admitted to U of C, I went to tell one of my high school teachers, and he looked up from grading his paper. Instead of congratulating me, he said, "You know, that's a hard school, right?" Or when I got to University of Chicago, a classmate went to someone I was dating at the time and told them, you know, she's not smart enough to be here. You could do better. And guys, let me tell you, when I got to U of C, I was not well versed in reading the dense text of Adam Smith or Nietzsche or Weber. I'm not even gonna lie, it probably would take me an hour to read 10 pages, maybe even more. And I was being challenged in a way that I had never been challenged before, where I really started second guessing myself, and my self-esteem took a hit, and thinking, am I good enough to be here? And I really felt like an imposter. So I want to play one of my favorite TED Talks from Amy Cuddy, just a quick short clip from her to give context around that feeling of imposter syndrome that I went through, and maybe some of you guys have gone through or are going through today. So I'm going to play that quick clip now. Getting technically savvy here. Let's see. Okay. Turn me off. And then I'm
with me, because I want to tell you a little story about being an imposter and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. When I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. I was thrown out of a car, rolled several times. I was thrown from the car, and I woke up in a head injury rehab ward, and I had been withdrawn from college. And I learned that my IQ had dropped by 2 standard deviations, which was very traumatic. I knew my IQ because I had identified with being smart, and I had been called gifted as a child. So I'm taken out of college. I keep trying to go back. They say, you're not going to finish college. Like, just, you know, there are other things for you to do, but that's not going to work out for you. So I really struggled with this. And I have to say, having your identity taken from you, your core identity, and for me it was being smart, having that taken from you, there's nothing that leaves you feeling more powerless than that. So I felt entirely powerless. I worked and worked and worked, and I got lucky and worked and got lucky and worked. Eventually, I graduated from college. It took me 4 years longer than my peers. And I convinced someone, my angel advisor, Susan Fisk, to take me on. And so I ended up at Princeton, and I was like, I am not supposed to be here. I am an imposter. And the night before my first year talk, and the first year talk at Princeton is a 20-minute talk to 20 people. That's it. I was so afraid of being found out the next day that I called her and said, I'm quitting. She was like, you are not quitting, because I took a gamble on you and you're staying. You're going to stay, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to fake it. You're going to do every talk that you ever get asked to do. You're just going to do it and do it and do it, even if you're terrified and just paralyzed and having an out-of-body experience, until you have this moment where you say, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Like, I have become this. I am actually doing this. So that's what I did. 5 years in grad school. A few years, I'm at Northwestern. I moved to Harvard. I'm at Harvard. I'm not really thinking about it anymore, but for a long time I had been thinking, not supposed to be here, not supposed to be here. So at the end of my first year at Harvard, a student who had not talked in class the entire semester, who I had said, look, you gotta participate or else you're gonna fail, came into my office. I really didn't know her at all. And she came in totally defeated, and she said, I'm not supposed to be here. And that was the moment for me, because 2 things happened. One was that I realized, oh my gosh, I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel that anymore, but she does, and I get that feeling. And the second was, she is supposed to be here. Like, she can fake it, she can become it. So I was like, yes, you are. You are supposed to be here, and tomorrow you're going to fake it, you're going to make yourself powerful, and, you're going to... and you're going to go into the classroom, and you are going to give the best comment ever. And she gave the best comment ever. And people turned around, they were like, oh my God, I didn't even notice her sitting there, She comes back to me months later, and I realized that she had not just faked it till she made it, she had actually faked it till she became it. So she had
All right, guys, that's one of my favorite TED Talks. But I want to take a quick poll here and hear from you guys, and we're going to reveal the results at the end of the webinar. So how many of you have ever felt like an imposter, whether that be in the workplace or in a school setting or in any setting? So give me those results, and we're going to reveal what it is at the end of the webinar. But something I can tell you is that I have certainly felt like an imposter, especially my first year at U of C. After a few bad grades and some hits to my self-esteem, I really started racking my brain, like, what's going on? Because up until that point, I was pretty confident. And I started realizing that I had never tried to prove myself or my worth or how smart I was to anybody ever before. And once I discovered that, I was like, I came to U of C to become the person that Alex wanted to become. So I shifted my mindset from thinking about who I should be for other people, and I started focusing on who Alex wanted to be for her. And so I wasn't who I wanted to be yet, but I was going to fake it until I became it. And I had to look at what assets I had in my arsenal that was going to help me get there. And so there were three main ingredients that I had that all of you has today. All of you can leverage these same ingredients that I use to help me really own my power in business. So the first is being unapologetically me. That was so vital. The second is building my tribe. And the third is standing in my purpose. So let's hop on in here. So for the first one, being unapologetically me, this is so vital because in order for you to own your power, you have to own who you are. So I always tell people your greatest asset is you, because there's no one that can be you or do you like you. So why not be you? And so I'm gonna play another quick short clip from one of my idols, Carla Harris. And she talks about the power of just being authentically you and what results you can actually get from that. So we're gonna hop on in here real quick and play this video.
Finally, we will talk about one of the most important pearls, and that is perception is the co-pilot to reality. How people perceive you will directly impact how they deal with you. The power of authenticity. You are your own competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. So the last thing that you should, yes. The last thing that you should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. Anytime that you are trying to behave or speak in a way that is inconsistent with who you really are, you will create a competitive disadvantage for yourself. If your success depends upon your ability to successfully penetrate relationships, the easiest way to penetrate a relationship is to bring your authentic self to the table. If you bring your authentic self to the table, people will trust you. And trust is at the heart of any successful relationship. It is at the heart of any successful relationship. As quiet as it's kept, most people are not comfortable in their own skin. So when they see someone who is comfortable and confident in their own skin, they will gravitate towards you. They want some of that. That was
All right, guys. So I want to take another quick poll here and hear from you guys. So how many of you are currently struggling with bringing your authentic self into any spaces, whether that's work, whether that is in public spaces in general? I want to hear from you guys, and we're going to reveal the results at the end. So if you're on this webinar, you're probably the type of person who you always want to be your best, and you're probably competitive. And so just think about some of your favorite athletes. Or some of your favorite actors, or just people who inspire you in general. So here are a few of mine. And each of them has memorable, distinct qualities. So it's because they show up and show the world who they are and what is special about them. So Carla is super right. Your competitive advantage is the uniqueness in just being you. So think of just like Cardi B in general is like all goals when it comes to authenticity in general. So she's one of my favorites. But if you're spending your time trying to be someone else, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage because that already exists in the marketplace, but you don't already exist in the marketplace. However, I totally understand that hesitation in bringing your most authentic self in spaces, especially when you're a woman or person of color who has to navigate within environments that aren't really constructed with you in mind. So you may feel that showing up as you may be rejected, especially when you don't see people who look like you in the positions you aspire to be in. However, the one thing I will tell you is that when you don't show up as you, you're not only putting yourself at a disadvantage, but you're also allowing others to shape the narrative around who you are. And so, guys, let me tell you something. I am a Black girl with big old curly afro. This has not changed for, like 8 years now. And I have a lot of sass. I like to wear my ripped jeans. Like, I don't change who I am for anybody. So the me you see right here today is the me that went to pitch several people, investors that don't look like me, AKA white men, on why they should give my company money. And we were able to successfully do it. And some of my favorite advice that I ever received from Bob Rosenberg, actually, who was on staff when I was at UFC. And this was when I was building my first company. He turned to me and said, Alex, investors don't invest in ideas, they invest in people. And I believe that's for anyone, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur. So let's say you're pitching to investors as an entrepreneur, or you're an entrepreneur at a company and you want that promotion. So the one thing I always think to myself is, if people don't know who I am, how can I expect them to show up for me if I don't show up for me? And let's be clear here, like, not everyone is gonna, excuse me, not everyone is gonna sign up and be on your squad when you show up as your authentic self. Like, I am not everybody's cup of tea, and I am okay with that. Like, I have a lot of energy. I'm persistent about getting what I want, and I say yes, queen, a little too often for some people's taste, but I'm cool with that because the people who are in my tribe, the people that are down with me, really see the value in me, and they want to support me in being my most badass self. So if you're currently struggling with showing up as you, excuse me, whether that be in the workplace or within your own company, and you may be questioning whether or not people will like the real you, I want you to ask yourself a different question. Instead, I want you to ask yourself, what am I losing by not showing up as me? And I guarantee you that you're losing way more by not doing this. All right, guys, so now that you've shown up as your authentic self, I looked at, okay, how can I also get to where I want to go by being me? It's people. So building my tribe, that's who is going to help me get there. It's like, I'm going to show up as me. I'm going to connect with the people that are down to help me get there. And I speak around the nation on, several topics in entrepreneurship and authenticity and just owning your badassery. And the one thing that I always mention are my mentors, because the people in general, actually, people, because a lot of my successes, every milestone I can think of, are because people showed up and helped me get there. And so when you're thinking about building your tribe, something that really helped me to reframe how I was going about it, and I want to share with you guys, is that success isn't determined by class, it's determined by access. So if you're like me, you didn't come for money, you had limited resources to gain access to, because let's be real, privilege is a real thing. However, that's where your tribe comes in handy, because when you aren't starting from a place of privilege, it will be one of the greatest assets that you will have in getting to where you want to go. So once I figured this out, I continued learning and being the best that I could be, but I also put just as much energy into developing relationships, because each of your relationships becomes an access point for you. But I want to be clear on something. Notice that I didn't really focus on, I didn't say networking. I said developing relationships, because my tribe consists of people who I'm actually interested in, I care about, and I didn't create those connections with them because they could do something for me. Instead, I developed those relationships because I admired them and I wanted to add just as much value to them as they could add to me. And so before we step into, excuse me, how I ended up developing my tribe and the tactics I use, I want to give you a few do's and don'ts for excuse me, how I went about networking and developing those connections. So the first is, don't be that guy that goes to events ready to just hand out your business card. I see this all the time. And you're not really taking the time to actually make a connection and have a conversation. It's not about quantity, guys. It's about quality. So if you're that person that just wants to go and hand out your business card, one of two things are going to happen. One is you're going to exchange cards, follow up, and have nothing to talk about, #fail. Or two, you're going to come across as salesy or creepy or needy, and no one wants to be that guy, so don't be that guy. And the next that I had to really learn is never allow yourself to feel inferior or superior to anyone. I don't care if you're speaking to freaking Obama, like, you never know what value you can add to him that he can add to you. So never allow yourself to feel inferior or superior to anyone. And the next is, guys, get out of your comfort zone. Like, this is so freaking important. I cannot tell you, like, some of the most meaningful connections that I made were from going to places and being around people that I would never have thought about being around before. So yes, get out of your comfort zone, go by yourself. And so let's dive into how I built my tribe, how I started to do it. So the first thing that I did is I went to places alone. And this is so important because what we don't realize, like, our human nature is when we're with people we're comfortable with, we tend to use them as our security blanket. And this really prevents you from creating those connections with additional people, with new people. And some of the best people in my tribe are the people that I would never have expected to be there, because I open myself up to be vulnerable and allow those people to come in. And the next thing I did is I searched and attended events that were of interest to me. So when we were starting ZipFit, we didn't have any money to market. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to as many events as possible, meet as many people that I think could be really great people in our tribe to help us build this thing. And I looked at places like Eventbrite, Meetup, etc. And I went maybe 2 to 3 times a week. I'm not saying you guys have to do that, but these are some tactics you can use to really search for things that are of interest to you and meet some of those people. And the next is set an intention. This is super important. So ask yourself, who are you looking to connect with and why? This way, when you go to events with a goal in mind, so you aren't really wandering around and looking awkward, honestly. The next thing that is super, super crucial to building my tribe is mentors. Like I said, guys, like, my mentors were such an integral part of my success in business. And when I do speak around the nation, I do mention my mentors quite a bit. I have a lot of people that come up to me and they always ask, like, well, excuse me, how did you develop those relationships? How did you get mentors? And I'm noticing that a lot of people, let me sip my tea real quick, guys, sorry. Okay, so a lot of people are looking at mentorships or finding mentors as this really formal thing. And I think, I mean, obviously there are formal mentee and mentor relationships, but I'm not that person. I actually just found people I admired and kept in touch and adopted them as my mentor, and they never said I couldn't call them that, so they're my mentor. So here are some tactics I use in developing those relationships. So the first is making a list of people you admire. And it's okay, shoot for the stars. You know, if there's someone on your list that you're like, I need to connect with them, definitely put them on there, but also be realistic, because if they're really, really well known, I'm sure they're getting hit up quite often about mentorship or connecting. So shoot for the stars, but also don't underestimate the people that are more low key, who have great career paths and great skill sets, because some of my best mentors are the ones who are silent movers and shakers. And the next thing is find a way to connect. So we have so many tools today, whether that's LinkedIn, our alumni networks, etc., or just getting a friend to make an introduction. So just find a way to get in touch with them and make it happen. And the next, again, set an intention. So when you're looking at developing these relationships, you need to have an idea in mind for why do you want to connect with them? Because they're probably going to be busy people. And think of, do they have a specific skill set you like? Do they have a career path you're interested in? And what are some of those specific questions you would like to ask them? And I want to give you guys an example of one of my favorite mentor-mentee relationships, Oprah and Maya Angelou. So before Oprah was Oprah, the badass billionaire babe we know her to be today, hashtag goals. She was in college and knew that Dr. Angela was going to be coming. So she had her sights set on meeting this woman and asking her questions. So she had the intention of doing that. So after Maya Angelou spoke at her school, she came to her after she spoke and she was like, Dr. Angelo, thank you so much. I was just hoping I could get 5 minutes of your time. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you. Maya Angelou was like, I don't know, I'm kind of really busy. And she was persistent and she was like, just 5 minutes, I promise. So they sat down for 5 minutes. Oprah had her questions in hand, ready to go. She even timed herself. And when 5 minutes came up, she interrupted herself and she said, Dr. Angela, excuse me, it has been 5 minutes, but I would like to thank you for your time. And Maya Angelou just looked at her and was like, girl, who are you? And it's because not only was she showing that she's persistent, she's ambitious, but also that she's true to her word and respectful of her time. So again, guys, never feel inferior or superior to anyone. If it's, someone famous that you're really, you admire a lot, whether it's in academia, celebrity-wise, I don't know, D-list, who cares? But never feel like you can't, that it's too much. Never feel like you're not good enough to connect with them. And the worst that can happen is no. And there's billions of people on this world, so you are going to find mentors. All right, guys. So the final thing in terms of really keeping those mentor relationships going is you have to stay in touch. And guys, this is like any successful relationship. You have to nurture them. So develop a cadence, whether that be reaching out once a month, every other month, once a quarter. Just develop that cadence because you want to get as much value out of them as they can get out of you. All right, guys, so we talked about the first 2 ingredients that really helped me to own my badassery in business. But the final ingredient, and probably my favorite one, is standing in my purpose. And I would say that this is the most important in my opinion, because guys, I'm gonna be honest, there's gonna be days where you're not feeling yourself, you're gonna be down on yourself, and maybe you feel lonely, maybe you feel like I don't want to reach out to my tribe right now, but your purpose is the thing that gets you going every day. It's your why. It's your reason you wake up in the morning. So even when you're not feeling it, you're just like, I have my destination in mind. I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to stop here because purpose is another one of those buzzwords that everyone keeps throwing around. So I'm going to give you my definition of purpose. I believe your purpose is something you find is a duty, yet you find joy in doing. And one of my favorite quotes around this about purpose is that think of it as your joy, that's your inner guiding compass. And that's my favorite way to really look at it. So it's kind of like your navigation system. Think about, let's say you're going to a party, you put in the address, you're on the train, you lose that signal, and you're like, I don't know what stop I'm supposed to get off at, or in a car. That's kind of like what your purpose does. It's your navigation system. And when you feel disconnected from it, it feels really overwhelming and kind of scary. And I'll use myself as an example. So of what it looks like when you lose that GPS signal. Like I said, I ended up resigning from my companies at Fit Denim in September. And here's why. We were growing and scaling the company, really getting momentum. And that is such an exciting thing, excuse me, for any entrepreneur in a startup, because not only is it validation, it's like, wow, we have legs, but no, we really have legs, and such an exciting time. But I honestly could not even enjoy it because I wasn't leading with my purpose first. I was leading with profit first. Because we were scaling and growing, I got so fixated on leading with the profit aspect of it that I completely left my purpose at a pit stop along the way. And I didn't realize why I was exhausted, why I wasn't passionate about what I was doing in my role, why I wasn't passionate about what we were doing as a company anymore. And the one thing, guys, that I have to say is money will come and go. And actually, money is a great way, profitability, whatever, it's a great way for you to stand even further in your purpose, but your purpose has to be at the forefront. So when I figured that out, and Mondays really started feeling like Mondays to me, I had to take a look at, okay, Alex needs to look out for her well-being, but also the well-being of this company and respecting what we have built as a team. And so I stepped down so I could have some time to really figure out why is Alex here? What is she meant to do? Who am I here to serve? And so I took some of that time and found that I'm really passionate. Like I said, I'm here to empower people to empower themselves. And I specifically wanted to do that for female entrepreneurs. So when I looked at how I can match my inner purpose with my outer purpose, every single thing I do every day has to be connected to that purpose. So whether that's me coaching my clients, me doing my YouTube series, me connecting with aspiring entrepreneurs, or people just want to pick my brain, it has to go back to my purpose, because that's the thing that drives me. It's my GPS system every single day. So for those of you that know your purpose, bravo, that's incredible. And please share that wealth, because there's probably people looking at you like, wow, I want some of that joy. So share the wealth. But for those of you that are currently struggling with it, whether that's you don't know what it is, or those of you that know what it is but you feel disconnected to it, I want to help you guys get back in your purpose, standing in your purpose, walk it like you talk it, get back on point so you can really own the badass that you're meant to be. So I have a few questions that you guys can ask yourself that will help you navigate through this, really defining what your purpose is and getting you back on track and getting you back on the road to owning your power. So the first is, ask yourself, what gives you joy? And this is something that I don't think we do enough of. I wasn't doing this really at all. But this is super important, because you want to be able to clearly identify those moments where you sense joy so you can reproduce it. So think of, those moments. What are you doing? Where are you? Who are you with? And then the next question to ask yourself is, how often do you feel this joy? So remember that your inner joy is your inner guiding compass. So if you find that you're not sensing this joy often, that means that something has to give. We need to really figure out, okay, how can I identify those moments to reproduce this joy? And then the final is, what can you do today that allows you to feel that joy? So start writing out those things that make you joyful. And this doesn't have to be a massive undertaking. Like, of course, you can put down traveling around the world, but that's kind of a lot. That's a lot of planning. And don't discredit the really small things, because they add up to a lot throughout your day. So, for example, I love to read. I read books like I go through Netflix. I just switch back and forth. So I have like half read books here, half read books over there. And I go back to it whenever I feel like it. And I love to read. Those things give me joy because it empowers me. It helps me to empower myself to empower people. And so whether that's me going to a meeting, and in between meetings, whether I can read on the train, read in the park, I will find ways to do that. And also, I love coaching my clients. So those are things that give me joy, or consulting entrepreneurs. Those are the things that give me joy. So I know what I can grab at to get that joy back. Awesome. And so what I really want you guys to do is start thinking about, walking around, whether that be with a pen and paper or that be with the notes just on your phone, writing down those moments where you're feeling that sense of joy. And I promise you guys, you'll start connecting the dots and figuring out, oh, wow, here's patterns and when I'm feeling this way. And it will get you back on to identifying what your purpose really is and where you can match that inner purpose and doing it every single day, whether it's your job, a hobby, etc. But you guys always want to lead with purpose in the forefront so you can feel joyful at everything that you're doing. And so my final question for you guys is, how many of you are ready to own your power and show up as a badass today? And if you guys all don't say 100%, then I'm gonna have to fire myself. So I hope it's 100% that you are, but I'm gonna send it back over to Rachel, and we're going to get into some of those questions now. But thank you guys so much for listening to a little bit about my journey and how I learned to own my badass in business. And we're going to reveal some of those poll results and hop into the Q&A. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, we've got some comments that folks posted in the question box that I think are worth reading. One is from Krystal. What is crazy is watching men in my industry failing constantly and being given second and third hundreds of chances to refine their skills. Whether they've lost deals, mishandled millions, just straight up not showed up to an important client meeting, they never feel like they're imposters. They're merely given the chance to grow and learn from their mistakes till they make it. They're given that same chance a lot of the time. And I am not given that same chance a lot of the time.
And that's a comment. Sorry, that was a comment,
Oh,
right?
I was going to say I have another comment, but if you want to respond to that one, why don't you respond to that?
Krystal, that's so real. I don't know if you've, thank you for your comment, because a lot of women sense that. I'm not sure if you saw I forget the name of it. It was like the United Women's Conference. I posted on my LinkedIn, but Michelle Obama actually mentioned this. She was like, it is so frustrating seeing men fail up. And it's true. You see them fail up. And one thing I can say to that is it's not fixed and it is annoying as shit. And that's why I wanted to focus today on us owning our power, because there's still a lot of things systemically that need to happen. There are things we can be doing to own our power. So really creating, and I find this so important for women, when I look at the differences. So for example, I interviewed 100 women for my series coming up, thousands of hours talking to female entrepreneurs. And I don't think this is limited to female entrepreneurs, but finding that developing those networks is really something we're not well versed in. So the one thing I can say to you, it is super fucking frustrating. Sorry, Mom, I know you're watching this, but what I would encourage you to do is really develop your tribe. Have your people that you can talk to and vent about it, because you do need to have that outlet. But you want those people that can vouch for you, because I always say a boys club is people just like sharing resources and vouching for one another. When you develop that tribe and have those people showing up for you, you're going to see a difference for yourself. And that's something that I feel like men are very well versed or trained in doing that we do not train women in. So thank you so much for your comment. I totally agree with you. It is super freaking frustrating seeing men fail up. But the only thing we can do right now is really figure out ways we can own our power, and so we can keep pushing forward.
Great. Another comment from Bree is, I struggle to be authentic in my workplace. I feel corporate America doesn't provide a space for someone like me, a Black woman, to simply be. I often feel constrained and have to tailor my conversations and interactions with others given cultural differences in the workplace.
Ooh, Bree, that's really interesting. So I spent I'm not well versed in this because I spent 3 months in corporate. I've been an entrepreneur basically since coming out of college. But the one thing that I will say to that, and this is from talking to people like mentors, most of my mentors are actually corporate people. And this is what Carla said in that video. I would actually encourage you to go and watch the full 20-minute YouTube version of it. Badass Black woman who has been on Wall Street and senior executive roles 20 years. So she's a great example. I would really encourage you to start coming to work and not tailoring what you're saying, like really muting who you are and your authentic self. And I understand it feels really scary when you don't see a lot of people that look like you in the positions you're in. But I don't think there's anything to lose when you show up and come to work and show who you authentically are, because I honestly think people will gravitate towards you more. But really go and watch that YouTube video by Carla Harris. I think it's a great example of what it looks like when you show up and show people who you are.
So how do you get past discouragement when you're witnessing men failing up?
Ooh, that's a great question. Honestly, I do a few things in terms of my self-care routine. So every morning I typically go to the gym, I meditate, but also my tribe. So again, I said vent. Like, it is okay to vent because it's frustrating. It sucks seeing men fail up, and being able to talk to people about it, men and women. I actually talked to my male friends about this to get their perspective on it as well, and having some of those conversations. So I allow myself really to just be human, experience it, but also give myself outlets to get it out. So I'm not sitting like I always tell people, I don't like to sit in my own shit. So I'm not sitting in it, and really develop those relationships, guys. Those relationships, especially for women, developing your network is so huge, because that is a huge way for you to kind of surpass all the BS. But really allow yourself that outlet to vent about it. Listen to, audios. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read up on a lot of things. to keep myself informed, but just giving myself that outlet to be human, to identify and understand that this is a problem, talking to people about it, but then also equipping myself with the tools I need so I can overcome it.
So on this topic of self-care, someone said, like, could you share maybe some specific boundaries you set or routines you have that help you protect your power?
Yeah, great question. When I feel, and this is something that I did not do very well until maybe a year ago, is you always know when you need to stop. And we keep pushing past it. And so I think the US is probably the worst for this in terms of self-care routines. We have a really high rate of burnout, and I know what it's like to burn out, and it's not good. One of my friends, Daniela, she's actually another entrepreneur in Chicago. She said something really interesting to me because she had a company that she ended up selling. And after she sold it, she was like, you know, I could look back and say that I probably lost close to 6 figures in potential revenue because I didn't take care of myself. And just imagine if I was looking at prevention and self-care versus trying to make up for my burnout, what I could have achieved, what more I could have achieved. She's already very accomplished. So that's something that I didn't learn until a year ago. I'm still pretty new to the game. So things that I do is when I feel like I'm so stuck on a problem and I just keep vacillating and I'm just in my mind, I stop and I meditate. And again, meditation can be very, very annoying to some people. It was annoying to me before too, because people would tell you, like, I didn't know how to meditate, and people would tell me, turn off your thoughts. I'm like, how do you turn off your thoughts? But it's not about turning off your thoughts. It's really about acknowledging them, you know, saying, okay, I see you, and trying to get refocused. And it's a habit, something you have to create a habit for. So that's something I do. My thoughts still come up, but I just have to say, okay, we're refocusing. That helps me a lot to really recenter. Working out is huge for me. And just not doing anything, doing things that are not related to work, building my business. That means I love playing my guitar. I'm relearning playing the guitar. So putting those things in my schedule. Also taking myself on a date. That is mandatory. That even the people I date, I like put on their calendar, this is the time you should not contact me. Do not contact me during this time because this is Alex's date time and I'm numero uno. So those are the things that I do just to really take care of myself, because guys, like I really didn't start listening to this until I left my last company, and I've been on several planes, but when they say give yourself oxygen first, it's true. Like, you cannot be useful to anybody if you're not useful to yourself. So you have to take care of you first.
So another question kind of on this same direction is, how did you navigate the instances where you felt actively discouraged from owning your own power?
How did I navigate it? Yeah, that's a great question. For me, early on, I quite frankly did not navigate it really well. So maybe college, when I first started building companies, I kind of kept it in. That's not productive. But what I can say I do today, because you guys, even though, you know, I have been well versed and trained myself in owning my power, I'm human. I still have moments where, you know, I am doing a completely different thing now as an entrepreneur. I'm coaching, a coaching practice, and I'm building out a YouTube series, which is going to become a media company. I haven't done either one of those things before. And so there's days where I still have that, oh my God, who the F do you think you are doing this? Because you've never done it before. But that's where I reach out to, and guys, tribe is so important. Whether it's your friends, mentors, my mentors, I'll never forget when I was at ZipFit, we actually had an investor come in who was really awkward and would not give me like eye contact, yet he would give my co-founder, who is, well, she's half Egyptian, but she passes as white, and then the other investor is a white male, eye contact, and to the point that everybody else in the room noticed it. And I remember afterwards, I kept my cool, I waited till everyone left, and I remember calling, and I was like, Keith, what the F was that, blah, blah. So there's moments like when I feel down, because I felt really demeaned in that moment, because he was on my home turf, and disrespecting me. But I still had to keep my cool. But I leveraged those relationships with my mentors, the people in my life, to really get it out. So I'm not stuck in my head. And I think that's where we just disempower ourselves, is when we keep it inside of our head. And that's where the power of relationships really becomes, really getting outside of your head, talking to those people in your life to give you perspective. And I still have to tell myself, like, get out of your head. I notice when I start vacillating and I get stressed, it's because I'm so much into my head. So the way that I really train myself and get back to owning my power when I feel like I've got off track is I reach out to the people in my life that can remind me of how much of a badass that I really am.
So we have another question of someone who said that they're a professor and supervisors the ones they gravitate towards are more introverted. So do you have suggestions for making these relationships with introverts more helpful, who maybe aren't as interested or see the value in tribes, and suggestions for reaching out to the rare extrovert in their field who is more successful but less of on their wavelength?
So that question was for someone who's an introvert. What are the tactics they can use?
Well, they're saying, I think, that they're the mentors in their field, the experts in their field, often they are introverts. And so how do you help create a tribe of introverts? And then they are also an introvert, so how will they reach out to a successful extrovert?
Got it. So if they're an extrovert, try to reach out to an introvert. Guys, again, it's never feel inferior or superior to anybody. And sometimes it's funny, a lot of my friends are introverts, which just don't like people. But a lot of my other halves as friends. But in terms of reaching out to those people, just because they have a different demeanor than you doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be a connection that's made. Like I said, in my tribe, some of the people that I never expected to be in it are in it. And there's something to be said to have people around you that are different from you. Like if there's a ton of me's with a lot of energy walking around, like I would be depleted every day. I'm a lot. So the one thing I would say is, if there's someone that you want to reach out on a advisory level, mentor level, that maybe has a different personality than you, whether they're introverted or extroverted, identify things that you guys have in common. Like look up if they're a professor, or if there's someone that you can just look up their interests. What have they read? What works have they put out? And approach them that way, from something that is a common interest that you guys both share. It's kind of like, I tell people, like, relationships in general, whether it's finding investors, mentors, advisors, it's kind of like dating. You want to see, like, do you guys have things in common? Are you on the same page? Blah, blah, blah. So really look at what are the commonalities that you guys share, and talk about that. And it doesn't matter as much about whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, because actually the majority of my mentors are very, very calm, and they bring me back down to reality. They're like, okay, Alex, you're up in the sky. Let's bring it down for a moment real quick, because they know I'm going to stay in the sky, but they give me that perspective that I otherwise wouldn't have if I were just thinking about it on my own.
Another question is, so there are moments when I feel like I've presented myself authentically, but as a Latina woman, I'm uncomfortable with some of the comments I receive, such as I'm spicy. So how do I build resilience while being okay with being myself?
That's a great question. All great questions. I'll give you actually some feedback that I got from my mentor when that investor didn't look me in the eye. And guys, I'm a really straight shooter and very direct and blunt. In that moment, though, because he was a potential investor and because my team was around, I wanted to make sure that I was showing up in a way that wasn't bad. I don't think that's the right word, but that I was representing myself as a leader, rather. That's a better way to say it. And when I called my mentor to let him know, and I was like, what the F is that? I can't believe that he didn't give me eye contact, et cetera, et cetera. He was like, gave me a few pieces of advice, but he also told me, Alex, you have every right. And this is a very successful Black man who has navigated finance for the last 40 years successfully. So he's seen a lot of BS. He's been put in positions where racist positions, a lot of things that he's seen. So he had a great perspective, because he said, you have every right to call it out. So if someone you feel disrespects you or makes you uncomfortable, you have every right to say to them, hey, that actually, I didn't really, that comment didn't sit really well with me. So just a heads up, you have every right to say that. You don't have to suppress who you are, because obviously they didn't suppress who they were. They didn't think about that. And I think sometimes when we are the minority in some of these spaces, we're like on guard. So we think that maybe I can't say these things, but also realizing that sometimes some of these people just aren't being told when they've overstepped the boundary. So be that person that shows up and say, hey, that actually wasn't cool, and here's why. And as long as you're saying it and I'm sure you will, in a professional way, like they're like, oh, okay. And if they're offended by it, so be it, because they don't have any right to make you uncomfortable, because you're not making them uncomfortable.
So someone else sharing a question and some of their personal experience. I'm a high achiever. I used to be a pro athlete for 22 years. I have an MBA from Booth, and I'm now a senior manager at a Big Four consulting firm, on track for partnership. But it seems like there are other colleagues, white colleagues, who are being promoted, who have less talent and aren't being held to the same high standard that's being asked of me. He talked specifically about his supervisor setting a bar maybe higher for him than for others. I don't want to jump to conclusions too fast, and he says, I'm a Black man, but a lot of my white colleagues come to me sharing their astonishments of not seeing me up there, becoming a partner, reaching those goals. So how do I deal with that frustration, knowing that the game is not really fair?
Yeah, that's real. I mean, it's real. I'll give you a tactic that we use as entrepreneurs raising capital. One thing that we had to really shift our focus on when we got no's, we're asking people why we got those no's. And a lot of people will get a no, and as entrepreneurs move on, because they're like, oh, we're going to get, 9 out of 10 times you're going to get a no. But you have every right to say, well, okay, thank you so much, but why? Why are you saying no? And what could I do to improve? And so in your specific position, and you might have already done this, but I would recommend talking to your supervisor and saying, hey, here, and I'm sure you guys have reviews, or you should be having reviews, and you could take that opportunity. Or if it's too far away and you're like, no, I want to get this promotion now, have a sidebar. Say, hey, I would really like to set some time aside on the schedule to speak with you about, my trajectory here and the value I could add to the company. The Carla Harris YouTube video is really good for this too. But have that sidebar with them and explain, here's where I'm trying to go in the company. Show them receipts, like, here's what I've accomplished for you guys. It is okay to show those receipts and let them know. But also saying, what do you think I need to do? Knowing that, excuse me, where I want to go. What do you suggest I could be doing right now to get there? And how could I get your help in getting there? Like, what would you suggest? And you basically leave the ball in their court at that point, because you're saying, hey, I'm asking you what you think I need to be doing. And from there, they can give you that feedback. If you don't see any changes, because if you have people already coming up to you in the organization saying, like, you should be in that position, sometimes it's just best, and I'm not sorry to say this, sometimes it's best that your value could be seen better elsewhere. So I would say the first step is really creating that dialogue for conversation. It's unfortunate that the supervisor, they should be doing that work, but it is tough for people and women of color. So putting the ball in their court, asking those questions, and getting it from their mouth what you should be doing. And then when you have that performance review again, you've done everything that they said that you've done everything they said you should do, and you're still not getting that promotion. That looks pretty bad on them. And then you can really evaluate your options from there.
Great. One last quick question. What books are you currently reading or excited about?
Ooh, okay. Like I said, I read books like Netflix. So Keith Ferrazzi, which I mentioned, he was one of the quotes in there about success is not about class, it's about access. So never eat alone. So if you're someone who is, whether you're introvert or extrovert, I'm very extrovert and I still love this book. It's about networking and developing those relationships effectively. It is so intriguing and amazing to read. The next one is, what is it, like She Runs with Wolves, The Wild Woman Wolves. It's a new one. I just got in the mail. And then The Goal Giver. So my brother actually put me onto this book. He has been reading it like front and back for like a year now, and he uses it as his Bible, and I finally got it. And it is the single most important book for how I approach and conduct myself in business. And once I read that book, I just noticed an abundance of business coming my way because I shifted my mindset on how I was approaching business, because it was based off of giving and not seeking for anything in return, just for anything in return, just giving. So it's a really, really short read, quick read. I read it in like a day and a half. I would suggest that for anybody, whether you're an entrepreneur or an entrepreneur.
Great. Well, there are still some more questions, but I think we've reached the end of our time, and we want to thank you so much, everyone who attended. And also, Alex, thank you for all of the nuggets of wisdom you shared with us.
Thanks for having me. And there's info in the handout for this webinar. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm super accessible. I'm open to talking to everybody, especially people that went to UFC. You can contact me. I will tell you, if you don't hear from me for a while, I'm not ignoring you. I just really need to get an assistant. But if you want to contact me and you have specific questions and you want to connect, I'm on Instagram at the Batdorf, and you can also just email me at alex@alexbatdorf.com, and I'm happy to answer your questions that you guys have.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming. We hope you'll join us again for more of our webinars. We have another one on June 28th where you can learn the 3.5 tips to turbocharge your networking skills. So I really encourage that. Or check out Awesome. We're doing a young alumni career development series for those who are 10 to 15 years since graduation. It's open to everybody, but geared towards those early in their careers. We want to help you own your power and develop into the kind of leader you want to be. Thank you all again so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.